Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alan Gould. I'm the Executive Director of the Drenko Academy here at Marshall. And on behalf of the Academy and the Marshall community, it's my sincere pleasure to welcome you to the 257th birthday celebration of our namesake, the great Chief Justice John Marshall. It is now my honor to introduce to you the John Marshall Fife and Drum Corps for the presentation of the colors. I would also like to thank Professor Linda Dobbs for leading us in our singing of the national anthem. Thank you, Linda. And it is now my pleasure to present to you our President, Stephen Kopp, for some brief remarks.
The operative word is brief. Thank you, Alan. What a wonderful evening and a wonderful gathering. It's wonderful to have you all here and to celebrate the birth of our namesake, John Marshall. And for those of you not well acquainted with the history and John Marshall's birth, we're actually premature by 4 days in celebrating his birthday, but what the heck, I don't think he'll care. We have been celebrating this wonderful event, I think, since 2005. Is that right, Alan? Correct. In conjunction with the celebration of Constitution Week, and we felt that the two went hand in glove as you look at John Marshall's contributions to the establishment of the Constitution as the law of the land in this country through his rulings on the Supreme Court. And we could think of no other way, better way than to honor his legacy here than to celebrate his birth each year as part of a growing Constitution Week, which is now moving into its second week, and I think there might even be a third week on the near horizon, right, Alan? Pretty soon it'll be a celebration, a monthly celebration of Constitution Week, but it's a wonderful time to reflect on the legacy we have here at Marshall University and what John Marshall meant to our nation and what he means to Marshall University. So I invite you to enjoy the evening. It has wonderful potential, and I think it'll be realized as we enjoy the events of the evening. And I thank you all for joining us this evening. Have a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think now it is most important that at this time to extend a special recognition to our president. Since coming to Marshall just over 7 years ago, he's been supportive of all the activities of the Drinko Academy and especially supportive of the various activities we have during Constitution Week, whose celebration began during his first year in office. And this year is no exception. Before the president's celebration is complete, our president will have participated in all of our events, all 3 weeks, and we thank you for it. And this includes two very important and special events that are going to occur next Monday, September 24th. Monday's events begin with the ceremonial cutting of John Marshall's birthday cake. And just like John Marshall, it is not an ordinary cake. Its dimensions are 4 feet by 8 feet. The cake will be served at 11 o'clock on the plaza in front of the Student Center. It will be cut by President Kopp. And the public, including all of us here assembled, are invited to partake. And immediately following the cake cutting will be one of the most thrilling of Constitutional Week events. This is part of our annual quoits tournament. Quoits was the favorite game of John Marshall. And for the uninitiated, it's a game similar but much more difficult than horseshoes. Our major event is the President's Invitational Media Quoits Tournament. And President Kopp, as well as leading media personalities of the tri-state, will compete for the coveted President's Trophy. And I can assure you the competition will be fierce. If you've ever attended it before, you'll know these guys play for keeps. It's a wonderful event. So please join us Monday, September the 24th, for cake and quoits on the campus commons. Hey, Judy, how was that, huh? And for all that he's done for us, let's give the president a round of applause, all right? I don't see them here yet, but I'm sure that you'll soon discover members of our Fife and Drum Corps. They've been invited as honored guests to attend our birthday celebration. Their names are listed in your program, and I know you'll enjoy their company as they take their seats with you. This group has exceeded all of our expectations and is truly an outstanding ambassador for this university. So let's again give them a round of applause, all right? I also want to thank all the members of the Marshall community who have played major roles in producing tonight's program. Especially, I'd like to note Colonel John Smith, who serves as our vintner, or wine steward, and master of our wonderful reception bar. John is also the Director of External Affairs for the Big Green. And he's responsible for the selection of the wines known during the period of the early Republic, which are being served at your tables. These wines include a red and a white. They're bottled under the label, the Chief Justice Cellars. They're wines produced on the Oak Hill Estate that was built in 1773 by John's father, Thomas Marshall, in Fauquier County, Virginia. John inherited the estate from his father and enjoyed visit there until his death in 1735. So I want to thank John for his continued efforts on our behalf and helping to add to the authenticity of our dinner. John, where are you? Stand up and take a bow, all right? I'd also like to thank a person, I'd be remiss if I didn't, for a person who was responsible for organizing and orchestrating not only this event and tribute, but also the other programs constituting this year's Constitution Week. That's my assistant and cohort in the Drinko Academy, Mrs. Renee Denny. Renee, where are you? Thank you so much. Now, in keeping with the ambiance of tonight's celebration, it's my pleasure to present to you two outstanding jurists who are with us this evening. First, it's my pleasure to introduce a person who really needs no introduction. Presently, he serves as the Chief Justice of the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals, the Honorable Mena Ketchum. Now, as you know, don't get up yet, Menace. Sit still. I haven't finished there with the note you gave me. As many here assembled know, Chief Justice Ketchum is from here in Cabell County, and he's a strong supporter of Marshall University. He was appointed to our Board of Governors in 2002, and he served until 2010. And from 2007 to 2009, he served ably as the chairman of our Board of Governors. Among his many accomplishments as a board member, there's one that is very dear to our hearts. And that is that he and his lovely wife, Judy, gave the financial support which led to the creation of our Fife and Drum Corps, which we all love today. So I'd especially like to thank Judy and ask her to stand and be recognized for her contributions. Judy? I wanted to see the better half of the Ketchums, all right? Now, Judge Ketchum was also supportive of my decision to introduce the game of quoits to our celebration of Constitution Week. He enthusiastically embraced the idea and agreed to participate in our first tournament, and further demanded to take on President Kopp as his opponent. Well, all I can say is that in all matters, he's enthusiastic. But I must admit he's not very good. I'm sorry, Judy. President Kopp drubbed him badly. Perhaps his old adversary, President Kopp, put it best when he said, Menace has beautiful form, possesses marvelous technique, however, he tends to buckle under pressure. Justice Ketchum, will you stand to be recognized?
You will notice that he doesn't invite a Supreme Court
Well, that's good. I hate to see you embarrass your brethren, too. It's my pleasure now to introduce a fellow native-born West Virginian and Marshall graduate, the Honorable Rudy B. Coleman, recently retired judge of the Appellate Division of the Superior Court of New Jersey. Judge Coleman was born in the Raleigh County coal camp of Tams, West Virginia. I don't know whether you know much about that, but it's a town named for Major William Tams, who was one of the last of the old-time coal barons who lived on the property in the famous Winding Gulf coal field. Judge Coleman met his wife, Margaret Hairston of Charleston, West Virginia, while both were undergraduates here at Marshall. The judge received his bachelor's in English and Spanish in 1968. Then he graduated from Rutgers University Law School in 1974. In 1979, he became a partner in the firm of Carpenter, Bennett, and Morrissey in Newark, New Jersey. I might add, he was the first African-American to work for a major law firm in that city. Then I believe in 1995, he was appointed to the New Jersey Supreme Court, where he served with distinction until his recent retirement. I briefly had a chance to talk to the judge, and he told me that except for one brief short visit in the mid-1990s, it had been some 40 years since he had been back to his alma mater. So ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a hearty welcome home. Judge Coleman. Now, as part of our tradition, comes our birthday toast to John Marshall. Now, those of you that have joined us in the past know the drill. On each table, there's a bottle of a French sparkling wine, a Blanquette de Limoux. It's a wine developed by Benedictine monks over 450 years ago, 100 years before another Benedictine monk, Dom Perignon, perfected champagne. It's a wine that is well known and was well known by John Marshall and his friends, and was used by him and others on occasions such as this. Now comes the interesting part. I ask someone at each table to assume the initiative and pop the cork. Let's see how fast we can get it done. There's one. The president went first. I hear another one. Come on. There we go. Are they all popped? All right. It is now my pleasure to ask President Kopp to return to the podium. When he finishes pouring, to present our traditional toast.
Please raise your glasses. We raise our glasses to a true American patriot, Revolutionary War hero, a man who was beloved as a family man, as an honored citizen in his community for all of his hard work, and especially the definer of the United States Constitution, to John Marshall. Now I invite you to enjoy your dinner. As the bill of fare suggests,
We're serving victuals and wines that would be familiar to John Marshall, so please enjoy your Federalist supper. Please, I know some of you have not quite finished your dessert. I want you to continue to enjoy it, but in order to expedite matters, I'd like to introduce the rest of our program. It's my sincere pleasure to introduce our program this evening. I'm especially pleased to do so because it's an all-Marshall University production, including its author, producer, technical team, cast, and background music. Tonight, we are pleased to present to you the premiere performance of our one-act play entitled Be Ever So Humble. And I do so with the hope that you will enjoy our efforts. Thank you.
Chief Justice John Marshall and his wife to their Richmond home to celebrate the Chief Justice's birthday. The Chief Justice is a gracious host, and you and his parties often include succulent meals and ample drink. Mrs. Marshall, Polly, prefers more sedate occasions, but you will find her a lively hostess and a lively storyteller. John and I served together in the Culpeper Militia, and then again in the 11th Virginia Regiment. Later, during the War for Independence, we were billeted together at Valley Forge. It will be good to see my old friend again.
Hello! Hello, Captain Slaughter, my old friend. Well, you are most heartily welcome, but I fear I have lost track of time, and you have discovered me in my domestic duties. I must confess, our tables and mantels quickly become hidden beneath various stacks of books, newspapers, letters, and pamphlets. Thus, as you see, I have snatched up broom and bucket to bring order to this house.
It is I who should apologize. I fear in our eagerness to hear of your accomplishments, we've arrived ahead of our appointed time.
Well complimented. I am confused at your interest in my history, as for the events of my life are too uninteresting and of too little importance for any person not in my immediate family.
Well, your cousin, President Jefferson, as well as Presidents Adams and Washington, will be eager to chronicle their accomplishments.
Those men have the goals of burnishing their names. President Washington should always be remembered as first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. And we should remember President Adams, too, who did much to further the Federalist cause. If Mr. Jefferson wishes to be remembered as author of the Declaration of American Independence, as the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and the father of the University of Virginia, so be it. I, by comparison, am merely a lawyer in justice for whom words are the sharp instruments of my trade. My legacy is in my writing. I have no gazing ball to foretell the import of my various actions.
Ah, here you are. Thank you ever so much for the good graces of your company. John, perhaps you can return your utensils and bonnet to the closet so that we might properly entertain our guests? I'm so very pleased that you were able to join us in celebration of my dearest John's birthday.
Ever since John and I served in the militia together, I have known him as a most gracious host.
Yes. Since he was a young man, he would regale us with dramatic readings, especially the works of his favorite author, Alexander Pope. I met John when I was merely 14 and he was 24. Of course, we knew the many stories of his heroism when the two of you served General Washington at Valley Forge. I feared that his eye would fall on my older sister, Eliza, But she had expected an Adonis and happily lost all desire when she beheld his awkward figure and polished manners and total neglect of person.
But he caught your eye.
Yes, and happily eyed his. When my family moved to Richmond, Mr. Marshall organized a ball at the governor's palace for my sister and me. The affair was simple and frugal as to food and drink, but our gathering of friends and family was brilliant.
The British occupation and embargo took much from the families of Virginia.
Oh my, yes. The war with Britain had trained our families and deprived us of our normal comforts. I was a slender little girl without a gown and no experience at dance yet, as I had not been introduced into society. These were but trifling inconveniences to me, as I would not be deterred from attending the ball. We pulled an ancient gown from my mother's wardrobe and set about to add ribbons and lace to enhance what nature would lay to the eye.
I must confess, there was more dress than Polly in the ballroom floor that night. Her eyes shone brightly in the warm glow of candlelight, and when our eyes met, we both laughed. I knew I would climb Alleghenies of skulls and swim Atlantics of blood to have her.
Were you not a student of law at the University of William and Mary at the time?
I was.
I still blush to think that John, a young and vigorous gentleman at the time, would be smitten with me and that I was an idle distraction from his studies. How quaint it is now to find my name written in the margins of his lengthy notebooks. John was accepted to the Virginia bar in 1781 and quickly set about to establishing his professional standing in the community. Among his many tasks was courting me.
An undertaking complicated by a swarm of suitors, as her father would say. One in the parlor.
And two on the doorstep. His pursuit of me was a hurricane. Then the moment came when he proposed marriage. Dear John, for reasons I can still not fathom, I crushed his heart by saying no.
I left in defeat for a long horse ride home.
No sooner had he gone than I burst into tears. Why had I been so silly? Perhaps I recalled a line from a poem. She who scorns a man becomes a maid. Thus I steeled myself to right the wrong, grasped my scissors, cut a lock from my hair, and bade my cousin to ride with dispatch to deliver the lock to my dearest John. With this simple token, I gave him my heart, and he accepted.
I took her lock of hair and braided it with a lock of mine and placed the twine in a locket that she wears each day. On January 3rd, 1783, I was joined in the holiest of bonds to the woman I adore. And from the hour of our union, I have never ceased to thank heaven for this, its best gift. Her judgment is so safe and so sound that I have often relied upon it in situations of some perplexity. I do not recollect ever having regretted the adoption of her opinion. I have, however, regretted its rejection.
Always the statesman, Mr. Marshall. It is with a wife's pride that I say it is a fool's errand to try to best John's use of reason and words. Even Mr. Jefferson admitted he was bested by John's wit. He told Justice Story that, so great in his sophistry, you must never give him an affirmative answer, or he will be forced to grant his conclusion. Why, if he were to ask me if it were daylight or not, I'd reply, sir, I don't know, I can't tell.
You do well to affect the character of the grand Mr. Jefferson. If only more knew him as we do.
Yes, John has a brilliant legal mind, but he is also known as a convivial host who delights in the company of others.
As I well know, the legend of the Richmond Quoits Club has quite a reputation around these parts, especially its Saturday barbecues of roasted pig, mutton, and deviled ham. There were also stories of the 32-gallon punch of brandy, rum, and Madeira, and sugar, ice, and lemons.
Well, the recipe is mine, along with the oversight for the fair play of quoits.
Legend has it, whereas most men throw brass rings polished by manservants, you throw the heavy black iron rings that few men can lift, let alone ring the pin with.
Indeed, I am exceedingly blessed in the praise and kindness of my good friends and in my relations. My father, a man of modest means, saw to my education and gave me an early taste for history and for poetry. We lived on the Virginia frontier, and he was ever my intelligent companion, as well as the superintendent of my education. At age 12, I had transcribed Pope's Essay on Man, along with some of his moral essays. I went on to read the works of Horace and Livy, and continued my study with no other aid than my dictionary. I'll be forever indebted to my father for anything of value I may have acquired in my youth. Have you enough to drink, my friends? please do not stand on ceremony. Refill your glasses with the wine before you. As Chief Justice, I developed the rule that we justices would enjoy a sip of Madeira only when it was raining. Well, this proved no meaningful restraint, for, well, as I explained to my brethren, I think it is permissible here and now, given that our jurisdiction extends over such a large territory that the doctrine of chances make it certain it must be raining somewhere.
The great expanse is thanks to General Washington and his leadership of the Continental Army. You were a great companion then. You were idolized by the soldiers and our other officers, whose gloomy hours were much enlivened by your inexhaustible fund of anecdotes.
Thank you. Now, this is praise I can accept. It was there that I learned the consequence of a weak government that would not support an army set the riddice of British tyranny. This conviction was confirmed when I served as a diplomat dispatched to France, as a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, a member of Congress in Philadelphia, and as Secretary of State to President Adams.
When President Adams lost his bid for re-election, I was sure John would return to Richmond, content with his accomplishments, and help me raise our many children. My hope was dashed when Chief Ellsworth resigned his station to find better health in the south of France. I hoped John Jay would heed Adams' call to return to the bench, but Jay was not accommodating.
Jay was not disposed to accept the appointment owing to the low prestige of the court. When the capital moved to the federal city and land laid out within a few square miles of Maryland and Virginia, grand palaces were built for the executive and the Congress. But the Supreme Court had no home, and its justices no offices.
How intolerable! How were you able to affect the work of the Supreme Court?
A scant 2 weeks after the first session in Washington, Congress finally set aside a small and unremarkable chamber in the Capitol building. Jay was wise to fear that the Supreme Court would remain the weakest branch of government and kept an anemic orphan by the acts of Congress.
Yes, it was a time of dire test for a young nation when Mr. Jefferson, who was no friend of a strong national government or the courts, was to be president.
We were to have a president who was absent while the Constitution was written, debated, and accepted by the people. Now, both houses of Congress were controlled by those who gave allegiance to Mr. Jefferson, but the court at least consisted of Federalist justices like my husband, who were appointed by Presidents Washington and Adams.
I'm surprised Adams did not appoint himself. But he surprised me and others by proffering my name as the fourth Chief Justice. I received my commission 11 days later in the mail with no formal hearing.
The honor was well deserved, yet I was not much pleased with yet another appointment that would take him from our home. Our newest son, James, had been born the previous February, joining the boisterous house of children. John Jr. 3, Mary 6, Jacqueline 14, and Tom 17. Too long in Paris, too long in Congress, and now would be too long on the little hill overlooking the swamp and the Potomac River.
Recall, dearest Polly, that I had little choice in the matter. My salary as a member of the House of Representatives was meager, and my time devoted to Congress had diminished my law practice. I had wished to buy a large tract of land in Fauquier County that we could farm and eventually apportion to our sons, so I accepted the commission. And on March 4th, 1801, I swore an oath to office to President Jefferson.
What a sight they were. Two cousins, one who fought at the side of General Washington for independence, and another who retreated to his mansion on the little mountain when British cannons approached. One determined to make a strong judiciary, and another set to reduce its force.
Jefferson was ready to exploit any opportunity conveyed to him to undo the work of we Federalists, and thought he found it in the Constitution. Article 3 is noteworthy for its terse form. Section 1 declares that the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the legislature shall from time to time ordain and establish. To Jefferson, we were at the mercy of the legislature to define, populate, and pay for the inferior courts, as well as to dictate the role of the Supreme Court.
Indeed. In those days, the legislative body saw fit that justices ride the circuit courts in addition to hearing cases brought to the Supreme Court. Ours is a vast country with its people broadcast over a considerable expanse.
This must have come of great expense and time, and of great consequence to your family.
One time, when I was riding through Raleigh, I had discovered that I had lost 15 silver dollars out of my waistcoat pocket, and the coins had worked their way through the various mendings the pocket had sustained, and they had sought their liberty in the sands of Carolina. But I had discovered greater evils that day, when I found I had not packed a proper pair of breeches to wear to court, and not a tailor in town could be prevailed upon to work for me. Luckily, my robes provided covering for my absent clothing.
I fear that the lack of proper attire has no great consequence or concern to my dear husband. John treats his clothing as the negligent gardener overlooks weeds.
Not that old Saul again. Here, let me tell you a tale which is too often told at my expense. Not long after being named Chief Justice, I was at the market picking up produce and meat for our meal when a fellow shopper was struggling with the carcass of a mighty bird. He asked for my help by carrying the fowl to his home. I obliged, and he saw fit to give me a coin for my trouble.
The poor fellow learned only later that the nation's Chief Justice was masquerading as a menial servant. Oh, well, good heavens, look at this, John. I bought you this fine waistcoat several years ago, and you've still not worn it. Are you waiting for your current clothes to turn to rags, or have you requisitioned this garment as a bookmark?
We are not in England where judges wear powdered wigs and have ermine in their robes. Any embarrassment by ensemble is not to be mine, but reserved for one who assumes another station by refinement of one's clothing. My dearest Polly, I promise to wear your fine gift when the rest of my wardrobe is spent.
You seem to echo President Washington, who forbid any titles of his office that suggested a station of nobility, in spite of President Adams' insistence on such foppish titles as His Majesty the President or His High Mightiness.
I thank you, sir, for your kind words.
Now, while there's been little press, I understand from many who know such things, you have heard a case that changed the court.
Oh, shortly after his inauguration, President Jefferson learned of several undelivered judicial commissions President Adams approved of at the end of his term. Jefferson went to the Department of State and ordered the commissions destroyed, thus depriving Mr. Marbury the right to serve as Justice of the Peace in the District of Columbia.
As I know, Marbury petitioned the Supreme Court for a writ of mandamus, which would have required President Jefferson's Secretary of State, James Madison, to approve the appointment. The court did not grant the request. Was Marbury not entitled to his commission?
Marbury was entitled to his appointment, but the Supreme Court found that they did not have the constitutional authority to issue writs of mandamus.
I will need help to understand how the court, which is to be the nation's Supreme Court, did not give Marbury his due.
Well, this is a rather simple case. The case asks three questions. First, did Mr. Marbury have right to commission? And second, did Mr. Marbury have right to legal remedy? And third, did the Supreme Court have the authority to issue writs of mandamus? To the first, we ruled that the commission was valid upon its signing and sealing, and to withhold this commission, therefore, is an act not warranted by law, but violative of a vested legal right.
So you ruled President Jefferson had violated Marbury's legal rights by denying his commission. So was Marbury entitled to legal remedy?
Well, again, we found that common law favored Marbury. The United States has been emphatically termed a government of laws, not of men.
So then why not take the next logical step and issue the writ of mandamus as any other court would?
Philip, the Supreme Court is an invention of the Constitution, not of the legislature. We found a certain offensive proponent in the Judiciary Act passed by Congress conflicted with that of the Constitution. A certain provision in this law expanded the scope of the Supreme Court's original jurisdiction to issue writs of mandamus. Our decision invalidated this provision on the grounds that it expanded the Supreme Court's jurisdiction beyond Article 3 of the Constitution.
So is that to say that the court can only hear cases that are on appeal from lower courts?
Mr. Marbury brought his case directly to the Supreme Court, so any ruling, favorable or otherwise, was beyond the Supreme Court's constitutional jurisdiction.
As such, you handed President Jefferson the illusion of a judicial victory by denying Marbury his commission. But you asserted the right of the Supreme Court, not the legislature, to review acts of Congress and determine whether they're unconstitutional. Brilliant! But, my old friend, I fear in this matter you have made no friend of Mr. Jefferson.
Well, the right to judicial review should have come as no great surprise to my dear cousin of all men.
Seems he needed reminding, and you had the privilege and honor of writing that remedial lesson.
Yes, well, it was a simple case of law and fundamental principles. The Constitution is either a paramount law, unchangeable over ordinary means, or it is on the level of ordinary legislative acts, and, like other acts, can be altered whenever the legislature shall please to alter it. It is the providence and duty of the judicial department to say what a law is. We found that the Constitution was a paramount law, not an ordinary act of legislature.
To the Constitution and its defenders, present and future.
I serve but a small role in the bench. That real justice may be found in the actions of my dear Polly, who goes on to prove that it is the collective strength of the individual that is most inviolate. Now, some of you may have heard of the case of Angelica Barnett, a free black woman who was sentenced to hang for the murder of a Mr. Peter Franklin, a profiteer, who, while searching for escaped slaves, broke into Angelica's home and threatened her with a bludgeon. Protecting herself, she struck Mr. Franklin with an axe, and he died several days later. The great injustice of her sentence was repaired, well, thanks to Polly, along with other women of Richmond, who petitioned the governor to grant clemency, which he did.
It was a small victory in which I take great pride. As Chief Justice, my dear John has wisely refrained from participating in politics.
Though as a citizen, I will take the opportunity to vote in opposition of a second term for Mr. Jefferson.
Hear, hear.
Gentlemen, let us talk of other things. John and I take pleasure in the ample garden behind our home. It is the source of flower petals and spices I used to make potpourri.
See that great oak tree around which I built a bench? I often sit there to think through various matters.
Seeing him, our daughter Mary will tiptoe up to settle beside him while glaring at her brothers who are lurking in the grass as they plot to join her. Soon, there is much happy squabbling as they all clamor to be by his side.
These are the moments I cherish. Thy wife will be as the fruitful vine, and thy children as olive branches around thy table.
Honored guests, we are not apparitions visiting from the heavens, but mortal actors giving voice to words written many years ago. While we are flesh and blood, however, we cannot deny that reading these words has affected our spirit, and we hope maintain the souls of those who wrote and spoke these words.
Our nation is alive and resolute because we honor the majestic breadth of the Constitution and its opening and reading of the document by all the jurists that have ever sat on the Supreme Bench.
The authors of the Constitution knew they could not foresee the future of our nation, so they developed a system of laws that would allow for orderly progress. In remembering John Marshall, we remember that we are a nation of laws.
We are a nation in which governing power is divided and limited.
We are a nation that guarantees each citizen the right to liberty and justice.
We are a nation that turns to our Constitution to understand these many essential things. Join us now in a toast.
To John Marshall, who ensured that this is a nation defined by its Constitution.
And to Marshall University, may its sons and daughters be free and liberated as they inherit the legacy of our great nation.
It's my sincere pleasure to have participated in the production of this fine performance in a very small way. What I'd like to do now is to introduce our wonderful cast. And it's my pleasure to first introduce Ms. Jaime Mathis, who played Polly. Jaime is a Huntington native. She's a senior majoring in English and creative writing and has a theater minor. And what an outstanding performance she gave us as Polly Marshall. Thank you so much. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Dillon Clark, who did the part beautifully of John Marshall. Dillon is a senior theater major from here in Huntington. He has graced the stage of the Edwards Theater many times over. On a personal note, Dillon wanted you to know that he loves John Marshall almost as much as he hates Thomas Jefferson. And this performance is given in the spirit of John Marshall. Dillon, take a bow. And last and certainly not least, Mr. Ethan Trudel, who played Captain Philip Slaughter. Ethan recently received his graduate degree in theater from here at Marshall. He hails from Stevens City, Virginia. He has appeared on the Jones C. Edwards stage in numerous productions, and I might also add, he is the director of our play. Ethan said he was very thankful for all the opportunities he's been offered while a student at Marshall University. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you so much. Now, if I may, I'd like to take just a couple of minutes more. As I said in the beginning, this production is an all-Marshall production, and that's why I'm very proud of it. And as the Bard said, the play is the thing. And our playwright for this production is David Pittenger, Dean of the College of Liberal Arts. David, author, stand up. Well, the play, of course, might be the thing, as the Bard said, but it's the design and setting that really makes it come to life. And our production designer and technical director, someone I think many of us in the room know, is Mr. James Moore Smith. James, where are you? I might also add that, there he is, someplace. I might also add that he's responsible for this beautiful setting tonight. He's responsible judge for the setting for the Supreme Court, and he does a fantastic job for us. I would also like to acknowledge Miss Deborah Carter-Deem, our stage manager. Deborah has been involved in all of our activities since, well, the Drinko Academy was formed in 1994. And she's kept me straight and on the line, telling me when to get up here and when to get down and when to shut my mouth. Deb, take a bow. I would also like to give special thanks to our assistant stage manager, Bethany Barber, the house manager, Teddy Smith, our audio technician, Kevin Brandon, and also thanks to Professor Joan St. Germain, our costumer, Miss Patricia Proctor, editor and critical editor of our play. And I would be remiss if I did not recognize Professor of Theater Julie Jackson, who is responsible for selecting our wonderful actors and for creating the correct dramatic composition for the performance. And lastly, there's one more. As I said, everything relates to Marshall. The background music that you heard came from a recording entitled Rally Round Our Liberties, produced by Mr. Leo Welch and our own Dr. Wendell Dobbs. You know, Wendell is also one of the leaders, along with his wonderful wife, Linda, who sang for us earlier, of our Fife and Drum Corps. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our production ensemble. I'm pleased to say we're all Marshall people. Let's give them all a round of applause again. Now, I have just one last duty to perform tonight, and that is to identify the person at each of the table who will receive the beautiful floral setting there in the middle of the table, flower arrangement. If you look on your name tag on the back, you'll find a dot, and in the dot there's a number, as we know. But one of those numbers, if you can see, I don't know whether you can see or not, but one of the numbers has a star beside it. The person with the star gets the flowers, okay? All right, great. And again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming and helping us enjoy our birthday party. Thank you for coming.